Hello everyone and welcome to this explainer. Okay, let's dive right into this. When we think about human disease, our minds almost always jump straight to genetics, right? We think about the DNA we inherited, those microscopic codes hidden deep inside our cells. But what if we zoom out? What if we look at the immense power of everything existing entirely outside of our bodies? Today, we're going on a really fascinating journey to map out human disease causes from the outside in. We're going to explore how the world around us and the things we literally choose to consume actually become the pathology inside us.
To do this, we're grounding our entire exploration today in a truly foundational source. We're looking at the Textbook of Pathology, 7th edition. This masterwork was authored by Harsh Mohan, an esteemed MD and the professor and head of the Department of Pathology at Government Medical College in Chandigarh, India. And what's so fascinating about this textbook is that it doesn't just, list diseases, it structurally categorizes how the medical field understands the root causes of human suffering. It gives us a blueprint.
So here is our literal map for today's explainer. First, the architecture of external pathology. Second, environmental hazards and injuries. Third, the extremes of nutrition. And finally, microdietary factors and cancer.
Let's get right into Section 1, the architecture of external pathology, mapping Chapter 8.
Chapter 8 dedicates massive real estate entirely to environmental and nutritional diseases, starting right on page 231. Just take a second to appreciate the sheer scope of that. The medical field allocates a huge portion of its structural focus to diseases that originate entirely outside of our genetics. It's a really powerful reminder of how incredibly vulnerable and intimately connected our physical bodies are to the surrounding environment and the daily lifestyle choices we make. Right from the start, Harsh Mohan uses this highly intuitive, kind of two-bucket categorical approach to divide these external threats. Bucket 1 is environmental diseases. Bucket 2 is nutritional diseases. It's a super effective way to think about it, really. The environmental bucket is fundamentally about what happens to us, what the world basically forces upon our bodies. The nutritional bucket, on the other hand, is all about what we actively intake into our bodies.
Moving right along to Section 2, environmental hazards and injuries. The world around us.
Now, what's really interesting about this is that the environment isn't just some passive backdrop to our lives. It can act as an active, sometimes really aggressive agent of injury. The textbook explicitly breaks down these environmental diseases into 3 distinct subcategories. Step 1, environmental pollution. This is the air we involuntarily breathe, the smog, the industrial runoff in our water. Step 2 is chemical and drug injury. This one is fascinating because it ranges from accidental exposure to toxic agricultural chemicals all the way to the adverse side effects of the very medicines and pharmaceutical drugs we literally take to heal ourselves. And step 3, injury by physical agents.
Let's expand on that third category just briefly. Injury by physical agents refers to harm caused by external physical forces. So think mechanical trauma, extremes of temperature like severe burns or frostbite, atmospheric pressure changes, and radiation. This category perfectly illustrates the sheer variety of environmental assaults on the human body. It positions a burn or a pressure drop right alongside a toxic chemical exposure as a fundamental driver of disease. It's pretty wild to think about it that way. So, we've mapped out the threats that exist in the world around us. But that leads us to a really pivotal question. If the environment represents the forces that happen to us, what happens when pathology comes from what we consume? Let's move on and see how this builds our understanding of the second bucket of Chapter 8.
Which brings us to Section 3, the extremes of nutrition, the intake. Starting around page 238, this is where the outside world crosses the threshold of our mouths and becomes the actual building blocks, or, unfortunately, the destructive elements of our cells. And this brilliantly illustrates the stark juxtaposition in the text between the extremes of nutrition, obesity on one side, and starvation and protein energy malnutrition on the other. By placing them side by side, the medical framework highlights that disease doesn't just come from a lack of food. It comes from a profound imbalance of energy. It's a systemic breakdown, whether that's from a massive surplus or a critical deficit.
The textbook crucially categorizes protein energy malnutrition right alongside general starvation. And it's an absolutely important distinction because it represents a major spectrum of the global nutritional crisis. You see, it's not just about missing calories to burn for energy. It's about a critical failure to intake the essential structural proteins the body needs to maintain its tissues. Without those proteins, the body literally cannot rebuild itself. And that leads to devastating, complex, systemic diseases and physical wasting.
All right, Section 4, Microdietary Factors in Cancer, the deep dive.
As we shift from the macro to the micro, we can see exactly how the textbook organizes the pathology of our diet. On one side, we have the macro-level energy diseases we just discussed, but on the other, we have micronutrition pathology. This covers the microscopic elements our bodies require in incredibly tiny amounts. Think of it this way. If the macro side is about the sheer volume of fuel for the engine, the micro side is about the essential oil and spark plugs required to keep the whole shebang firing properly.
These essential microscopic dietary needs are broken down into metals, trace elements, and vitamins. What is absolutely crucial to grasp here is that a disorder or deficiency in any single one of these seemingly tiny slices causes entirely distinct, often severe pathologies. A minor deficiency in something that makes up just a fraction of a % of your diet can bring your entire biological system to a grinding halt. No joke.
I mean, even tiny trace elements like zinc or copper and specific vitamins have entire dedicated sections outlining their pathological disorders in this medical framework. It really goes to show that nutritional disease isn't just about weight, right? It's about cellular function on a strictly elemental level. Without these specific microscopic building blocks, which can lead to conditions ranging from severe anemia to debilitating bone diseases, our biological systems fundamentally misfire.
Which brings us to the final, heavily impactful topic of Chapter 8, found over on page 249. So, the crucial point is this: diet and cancer. The textbook explicitly links what we eat to the development of malignant tumors. This is where the macro and the micro combine over a timeline of years and decades. It frames our diet not just as a source of immediate energy or immediate deficiency, but as a long-term environmental exposure that can literally alter our cellular destiny.
All of this leaves us with a truly thought-provoking question. What exactly is the profound link between our daily plates and long-term systemic diseases like cancer? We've journeyed all the way from the smog in the air and the chemicals in our environment, through the extremes of starvation and obesity, right down to the trace metals and vitamins in our food. It's a lot to process for sure, but it powerfully maps out just how deeply our physical health is intertwined with the outside world. I really hope this explainer has left you eager to explore the deeper, fascinating mechanics of human pathology. Thanks so much for learning with me today.